Pretty city people.
Bochensky, Joe Banish. I'm the new education reporter with the Herald.
Hey, nice to meet
So I
you.
work with Megan.
Okay. Yeah. When did you start?
September.
Blocking around. Well, we'll have to catch up some other time. But
Yeah.
congrats.
I'm a hockey player as well.
Oh, nice. Cool. Where'd you grow up?
Michigan, Traverse City, Michigan.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man. Sheriff's got my six. There you go.
I'll even plug your ear before.
The trick.
It's like you got you covered.
Is Cynthia coming back?
Don't make it too long tonight.
Yeah, Lori's here.
There's only four. Interesting.
She's got pictures.
Grand Forks County Commission will come to order at 4 o'clock. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next agenda item is the oath of office for newly elected commissioners. So Commissioner Ross, Commissioner Kimberly Hagan, and Commissioner Russ take your oath. Ms. Wamstad.
You want us to stand that out there?
Yeah. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Kimberly Hagan,
Of Grand Forks County, North Dakota.
of Grand Forks, North Dakota,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of North Dakota,
and the Constitution for the state of North Dakota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Grand Forks County Commission
and I will faithfully execute the duties of the Grand Forks County Commission
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God. Kimberly, you guys want to come up here, we'll sign in front of the notary.
See the microphone on that. Sensitive. Okay. Tell her.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the election of chairman and vice chairman of the Board of Commissioners. So I would entertain a motion for the chair of the county commission.
Move that Bob Ross be appointed chair of the county commission.
Second.
Second.
Got it. Okay, all those in favor of Commissioner Ross acting as chair of the Grand Forks County Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Mr. Chair. Here's your gavel.
Thank you.
Elect the vice chair.
Okay, I guess it's open for vice chair. Anybody want to make a nomination for a vice chair? Okay, got a motion for Dave Ann. Kimberly made a motion for Dave. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next agenda item is the approval of the minutes. Everybody get a chance to read them? Move approval of the
I
minutes.
would move approval of the minutes.
I'll second. Okay. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of the order of agenda. To be added or anything to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Move same sign. Motion carried. Approval of the agenda bills, consent agenda bills. Did anybody want anything pulled? Consent agenda. Yeah, it's an approval of the consent. Yeah, and then it's got all the bills, employee status changes, overtime and county deeds. Anybody want anything pulled? Okay, do I have a motion to approve that?
Mr. Chair, I would approve.
Okay, I'll have you second, Cynthia. Mark made a motion to approve. All those in favor, signify
No.
by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Courthouse dome repair.
I'll take that one, Mr. Chair. So back in July, the Grand Forks County Commission had approved hiring a consultant who specializes in historical preservation and renovation to take a look at the Grand Forks County Courthouse dome after considerable leakage has been found within that dome. So Miller Dunwoody is the consultant that the county did hire, and I believe Daniel Green is on Zoom with us currently. If he is, I'll just throw it over to him and his team. And Daniel, you should be able to share your screen as well.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Mr. Chair and Commission, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you all see that presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Today we are going to talk about the dome leak assessment. With me today, we have Martina Foss Ashworth and Wing Kong from Miller Dunwoody, as well as Chad Dustin from Construction Engineers. Our assessment team also included preservation architects, Danita Lemon and Kelly Maston from Miller Dunwoody, structural engineers, Meyer, Borgman and Johnson, mechanical and electrical engineers, EAPC architects, and the cost estimating was and site access was provided by construction engineers. So we're going to walk through the assessment findings, recommendations, preliminary construction cost estimate for repairs, and note the next steps. Here you can see on the graphic just sort of a cross section that was created through the building using 3D scanning. So we took an opportunity when we were accessing the building to grab scans, which will be useful for the county in any improvements that move forward out of this investigation. We're going to talk about parts of the building, kind of working our way down from the top, starting with the exterior dome and the interior, and then what's we call interstitial spaces, or kind of the attic spaces above the rooms on the top floor of the building, and then the interior of the rotunda itself inside the courthouse. Starting with the copper roof, it's an original element of the dome, as well as the statue. Quite a bit of ornament up there, and it's seen a lot of weather. Takes the brunt of the weather on the top of the building, and it's showing its age. It's a very durable material up there, but for a building that's this old, it's expected to have some challenges. And so with movement, with temperature, joints have opened up over the years, and it's within those joints primarily, as well as with some cracks in the material, that we're getting a lot of leaks coming in into the dome structure itself. There have been some patching over the years, but largely those are shorter term repairs. On the walls of that dome portion, or drum, as you might call it, there's a ornamented material that looks a lot like stone. It's a product called terracotta, which is a glazed ceramic product that was used when the building was built for a lot of ornament. That terracotta is getting water on it from water that runs over the edge of the roof, as well as direct water, falling on it, and that material is breaking down. The glaze is coming off. It's got some cracks. You can see in the photo the green, which is the copper, actually staining that material. All of this is held on. It's put on a lot like brick, so it's stuck onto a backup wall made out of brick. This is also deteriorating, and once the material starts to crack or lose its finish, water can get inside it, and then freeze thaw can start to really impact this material, which we've started to see in a few locations. The windows also up in the dome area are not original. They've been replaced at least once, but they are performing fine, but they're showing some leakage around them as well. There's deterioration kind of around the window sills, and a need to improve the barrier at the window sills to keep water out. Inside that dome, I don't know if folks are familiar with the space that's up there, but there's a volume of space inside the area that has had moisture coming into it for a number of years. There have been temporary measures to capture that. As you can see in the photo here, these blue child swimming pools have been used to catch water. There's also a roof material that's been put down on the floor there. The walls of that space are brick, and they see a lot of moisture on them and have had some deterioration as well. You can see by the coloration that's moss growing, organic material, as well as there's been some impact of the face of the bricks up there. Further down in the building, it gets maybe a little bit more complicated, but the dome is a round object sitting on top of a rectangular or square base that is the rotunda, or the frame for the rotunda, and there's some steel structure up there that both holds up the dome and then holds up this the top of the dome, the copper part, as well as holds up the whole structure of the dome with the terracotta walls and so forth. On the right hand side, there's a cross section diagram kind of showing that steel structure that's both visible and embedded in the walls and in the floor, holding this up. There's a skylight up there. If folks have been in the rotunda, you'll see that stained glass skylight. It's actually an inner skylight, and then there's an outer structure that has a more of a traditional glass pyramid skylight over it that sits inside the dome and lets daylight into the rotunda. Within that, the structure inside the just under the roof is doing pretty well. There's some deterioration, but it's a riveted steel structure that is a lot like a bicycle wheel up in that top with spokes radiating out of a center section. There's a few locations with corrosion, but largely, because it's not catching water, it's not having deterioration issues. Further down, there's a ring of steel girders that holds up the dome itself, and that's where we're seeing some deterioration. Here on the right-hand image, you can see what is the base of one of the columns that comes down from that bicycle wheel ring up on top and lands on a much deeper, much thicker steel beam that holds up the entire sort of brick structure of the dome itself. And these are old plate steel riveted beams on the order of sort of 2 to 3 feet tall, and they're starting to delaminate or kind of come apart in layers in areas where the moisture has been getting at them for a number of years. And this is kind of buried up in that interstitial space below the dome. And then where it's maybe most evident inside the building is the plaster has been impacted. There's ornamental plaster in the hallways around the top level in the rotunda there. And the plaster's been damaged by water, which is not surprising as the water moves in and has dropped down into that space. And there's been some temporary protection for plaster areas put up in the corridors actually to make sure none of that actually drops off. It's a true plaster on a wire lath. Maybe folks, if they have some in their houses, might recognize that type of assembly, but it's a layered plaster system, and then in some cases there's ornamental shapes that are created in the plaster itself. There's also some electrical equipment up in the dome. It's been getting wet, and it's likely not rated for having moisture fall on it all the time. It was an interior panel, and so this is in fairly rough shape and has been getting moisture for a number of years. So that was the assessment. We were up there for a couple of days, both inside and outside the dome. We did some infrared photography. We did a lot of regular photography. We took measurements. We had scaffolding temporarily up there to get access to the copper roof, and then did some analysis and discussion and review of all the conditions that we see. Our recommendations are structured in the same order as the assessment here. There you can see a photo of some of that assessment taking place, but we're going to just sort of walk through those recommendations, starting with the top and the copper roof. Replacement of the flat material is recommended, which it's really not a flat roof anywhere, but it's flat panels shaped over the ribs of the dome. Then, as you can see, there's pretty ornamented copper elements both at the base of the dome and then further up by the statue, and those are really best refurbished. They're in fairly good shape, but and would be quite expensive to replicate. So retaining those and repairing them is a good approach to it. The biggest item that we would recommend for this copper roof itself is to get a second layer of protection underneath it. If folks are familiar with like ice and water shield on to prevent ice dams on your house, that type of rubber membrane or membrane can go on underneath the copper and act as a second line of defense to preventing leaks. And so getting those types of systems underneath the ornamental copper system really would make this roof last for a very, very long time. Copper has regular lifespan of 50 to 75 years. And so this would really make sure this roof is set up for a long period of minimal maintenance. At the terracotta, a large portion of this can be restored, and the joints can be repointed, much like a brick wall. You can replace the mortar in between the pieces, and then the coating can be restored. There can also be some flashings added at horizontal joints to protect from moisture that does get on it. And then above the windows, there may be some need for some repair of the steel lintels that cross over those openings. Moving inside, cosmetically, there can be some repairs made to the brick, but the main point of what might happen inside the dome is to really look at the steel that is embedded in the wall and make sure that that steel is in good shape, which might require some dismantling of brick to reach the steel and then repair. There's also a condition that occurs in this area of the building where warm, moist air in the winter especially gets into this area, and this area really isn't heated. And so what can happen is the cold surfaces can cause both condensation and even frost to occur when that warm, moist air gets into that space. It's pretty complicated to try to separate out the inside of the building from this space, but that's something that should be investigated a little bit more to try to create a separation. So as you might expect, there's kind of a chimney effect where this is the tallest part of the building and warm air rises and can get up into this space. And in the winter, that means energy loss. That means the chance for condensation in this area. The windows could be replaced with windows matching the original windows, which you can see in this picture here. Is from the original drawings of the building, which we located at the archives down here in Minneapolis. It could both improve thermal performance as well as bring back that historic appearance of the building. The note there, it says clad if allowed. Typically on a building that's of a historic, on the historic registry, the use of metals where maybe they might not have been used before needs some discussion, and so they could be aluminum clad or painted or wood windows. Structural repair is identified as necessary. Understanding the extent of that would be part of the first part of a design investigation, but there's a few things that can be done to repair the steel that's embedded in the walls and underneath. You can add some supplemental reinforcing to that steel or add other steel to take the load off of the original piece. There's also the ability to add coatings to reduce and halt the corrosion that is happening once the water is stopped. And that's primarily what will protect this building for the long term, is to stop that water intrusion. Plaster, again, can be largely repaired. There might be some areas that have to be recreated, but the extent of that would need a bit more investigation. But right now, it's fairly evident where that's occurring, and then there'd be obviously painting to bring that back to match existing conditions. The electrical, right now, recommendation to replace the panel, potentially if it could be relocated, or just certainly get a panel that could withstand any weather that might be coming at it. Always a good policy there. There's a need for some maintenance lighting in this area of the building. Getting to this area and within this area is just provide long-term access and safety for maintenance would be great. There might not be much mechanical work, but related to the plaster repair and access to the ceilings, there might need to be some temporary removal or relocation of mechanical systems that are up in that attic space. There's an aspect of historic preservation, as I mentioned, for this building. It is on the National Register. The repairs would be following Secretary of Interior standards. The National Park Service has a number of recommendations and standards for repair of buildings of this type. There's also review with the City of Grand Forks Historic Preservation Commission, and moving through. There's a process for this, but likely the key element would be preservation of as much of the historic fabric as possible, especially with the roof ornamental elements and the terracotta. There are grants available for this type of work, and I know that Tom and the team at the facilities folks have already expressed interest in trying to seek those out. So there's a process, much like a building code review or something, that goes that applies to the preservation process. We also would note some additional investigation, as I note during design phase, would be recommended. Some review of structural components within the brick piers. We didn't do any destructive testing when we did the assessment, and so actually taking some brick apart to get to that steel might be warranted. Tracking the condensation and temperature in the dome and in the space for that condensation question. Data loggers or devices that can measure temperature and humidity over a course of time and then report that back would be could be placed within various spaces to see how temperatures are changing. Investigation to understand the full extent of the plaster repair by essentially tapping on the plaster and understanding what's loose and what's firm. And then continued definition of that historic review process. We've had some initial communications with Grand Forks folks, but would continue that into a design and construction process. I'm just going to keep moving here through the estimate. So we prepared narrative as well as provided photos and had some number of discussions with construction engineers who knows the market there in Grand Forks, as well as placed calls to various subcontractors that have specialty in these types of repairs. Made sure CE was connected with them, and that influenced the whole estimate as it came together. There's a couple variables within the estimate. One is replacement or refurbishment of the copper, and there's a typo, I apologize, but essentially full replacement of all the flat copper on the roof versus taking copper off and refurbishing as much of it as possible and repairing it. So there's a variable in there. Less new copper means a lower price. The bidders for this type of work might need to reach a little bit more regionally. Copper work is, especially at this level of detail, is something that's really not done in new construction that much. And so reaching broadly in this region for contractors would be necessary. Plaster as well, depending on the level of ornament. There might not be folks in the immediate Grand Forks area interested in that. As folks I'm sure are aware, materials have had impacts with supply chain. Here for this particular project, we don't see too many, with the exception of maybe the electrical gear, which can be long lead. A number of contingencies are considered at this level of development of a price. Design contingency is one of those. So for unknowns and obviously a very limited amount of drawing or detail, a 20% contingency on the base construction value is considered. Escalation of values impacts when the work takes place. So the numbers that have been used are 10% per year. And that's I would say a historical average. We've seen some somewhat stabilization and escalation in 2022, not quite as volatile as 20 or 21, but that's something that would be tracked throughout the course of design. and then an owner contingency on top of the cost of construction, and that's noted as 3%. So we've got two estimates as a single phase, do it all at once value here. The first one being repairing, which would be looking at that copper roof using as much of the original material as possible, and then reinstallation with the addition of that extra membrane underneath the copper. And then the windows, the interior repair, the plaster, the steel repair. And that's a total number of just over 3.8 million. Replacement of the majority of the copper, with the exception of the ornament, is a higher number. And you can see here that number just over 5 million. And this just making note that there's work, this is about 2 years worth of work. So both work in 2023 and 2024 is what this estimate is based on. Now, we also looked at phasing this work, considering the roof being the highest priority to keep the water out. And so that being the first phase, and then breaking out the work on the masonry and the windows and the structural work, and then plaster repair, but which once the water is really prevented from getting in, there's time to consider plaster repair and phase that. And the electrical work could really take place at any time. One thing to note that there is some advantage of doing work at in one phase. Scaffolding, staging, access, disruption, all those things are potentially a little bit less of an impact, and there's more economy to it when scaffolding is used to access the roof and to work on the terracotta, for instance. But phasing could also allow some time for grant applications and just the ability to work at a pace that works best for the county. When we break that out, you can see line items here across. So each line would be the cost per phase with the total phase construction costs at the bottom here. In that top line, you see phase one, roof repair or replace. That's what those two numbers are. So as we mentioned before, there's sort of a pull all the pieces off refurbishment, lower number, and a replacement of more copper is the higher number. And I think we'll just do a brief summary next steps. Obviously, funding and grants are a possibility to get start looking at that pipeline. There'd be a design phase services to sort of draw these repairs and get documents together for bidding. And then the potential to get data loggers in over the winter and capture a little bit more information about condensation. And then as noted, the construction is about 2 years worth of work, and that could happen sort of in a one continuous process or in a phased process over time. So I think with that, Tom, back to you, or Mr. Chair, any questions? We're happy to take them. Thank you.
I got a question. So I'm gonna go back to when you referenced the second line of defense, that rubber membrane underneath the copper. Right after that, you mentioned copper will likely last 70 years, but in my career, I've never once seen a rubber membrane that lasts even close to that. So I'm wondering if the copper is a 70-year plan, why is the membrane necessary when it'll likely be dried out in 20 to 30 years? I might be missing something.
Well, thanks for the question. Whenever we're looking at a historic a building like this, it was built and designed with the best technology of the day or that was available, and so we try to bring redundancy to any existing details, and that's what a membrane would do underneath the copper, by being protected by the copper, so to speak, not exposed to any UV or other things. It does extend the life of it, and it really acts as that extra backup in case there is some opening or some failure in that copper member or copper roof material. But I guess I would say that there's a lot of different materials. I don't know if Wing would have any additional comment on the lifespan of that membrane. Wing is our waterproofing expert, if he wanted to chime in. But that's the mindset there, is to just get any redundancy we can to protect the interior, and adding that material is really what we're trying to do there.
Yeah, this is Wing. That your question regarding that underlayment, Dan kind of mentioned that with that copper protecting it from UV, that membrane can last. Part of that at that time when the building was constructed, all they have is building paper. Basically, it's like an asphalt coated paper that become as it react to heat, it can dry it up and become brittle. The difference is the newer material at this time available. You can have system if you do want to have a more durable material, you can use like a polyurethane that is a liquid apply that is better than ice and water. So those are things that we will consider when we put select underlayment for the system.
So if the water were to breach the copper and then make it to the membrane, and the membrane acts as it should and keeps it out of the building, where does the water then go?
So in the underlayment, when you install it, it does let it run down the slope, the dome, and then it's supposed to, if it's designed and constructed properly, it's continuous to the edge where the latch is, and it'll run underneath that copper and drain out that way.
Thank you.
So the way it is now, with the building paper disintegrated, likely that water is able to bypass that and go through those slab and through any joint in the masonry in the substrate and then leak inside. So if you have a system, when the copper is brand new, the seams are tight, that works in keeping most of the water out. But once as the copper roof age, their seams are going to open up, and we'll try to design, looking at the way it was constructed, we're trying to incorporate details that kind of prevent any assembly that sealant dependent, because your copper may be 7,500 years, can last that long, but sealant will not. So I see a lot of this from the existing dome. A lot of the detail are sealant dependent, and those fail long before any copper seam or solder seam. So that's part of the reason you have that significant leakage as the building age, and it's going to accelerate and it's going to get worse just because more of the seam will open, and you basically don't have any underlayment to keep that water out.
Any other questions?
How long would that membrane last? Like, would we have to replace it frequently, or did I miss that part?
So there are options in typical copper dome application. So because you have more of a, if you look at that dome, that slope, part of how it lasts that long is even with that building paper from that many years ago, when water get in through that seam in that slope portion, it's going to drain down most of it. So only when you're a certain area when the substrate is constructed with concrete and mortar, so they have seams in the mortar joint. So as that system age, it let water through. That's why you're seeing more water now as the system age, as the structure of the mortar age. The current system available, typically they'll put ice and water underneath the copper. And you're correct, the ice and water will not last as long as the copper. But there are systems available like For one, like a PMMA, they're better chemical material. They are like polyurethane. If you keep it from UV exposure, it can last 20, 30, maybe 40 years. And there are also systems that can last 50 years. This all depends on what system you want to put as the underlayment. Those 20, 30 years that we talk about when they are exposed to UV, like an EPDM roof, you look at EPDM, it's designed that say it's 20 years. The membrane itself doesn't deteriorate. If you look at an old EPDM roof, the rubber membrane itself doesn't disintegrate. The weakness of that system is the seam. So similarly with a membrane that you put on there, the weakness is going to be where the membrane seams together. So if you could put a monolithic fluid applied like polyurethane as the underlayment, that can be considered as a more durable underlayment system. But a copper roof system typically is meant to keep most of the water away. So even if you put ice and water underneath that and being protected from UV, it's going to last way longer than what the manufacturers say for that system.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the intent for today was informational. Obviously, staff isn't looking for any decisions or motions to be made today. Lots of information to take in, and thanks to Mr. Green and his team, they put in a lot of work. It's my recommendation to the commission, the commission's prerogative, is this is a lot to digest. The parking ramp repairs is on the agenda, but when we get to that item, I'm going to ask the chair to table it tonight. But I'm thinking with this and the parking ramp and many other issues coming down the pipe, I would suggest a public safety and infrastructure committee meeting at some point soon to really dig into this assessment and then the parking ramp assessment as well. And then there can be a lot more work being done in that public safety and infrastructure committee meeting. More questions can be determined, and some recommendations of next steps can then be brought back to the commission. So that's staff's request.
Okay.
I have one question for them.
Yeah.
You suggested either repair or replacement. Would we be going the wrong direction to just do repairs rather than complete replacement as far as the longevity of the roof going forward?
I don't know if we know the exact thickness of the copper up there right now. There's copper, there's weights and thicknesses to that metal. We do see fairly good hail damage up there, and those types of things. So, a fully new material is going to have that longest lifespan. It's still, and we would replace, anything that was severely cracked or that type of thing. So, I don't know that we could say a huge reduction in lifespan, but the longest life will be that newest material going on that roof.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And just so the other new commissioners know, we're all on the Public Safety Infrastructure Committee. So I'm probably looking maybe sometime in January for that.
That'd be okay, Mr. Chair. I can work with the commission and try to coordinate something.
Okay.
Get a meeting
Some
scheduled.
days it's suitable for everybody, so, all right, thank you. Right. Public health.
We'll report from public health today.
Oh, well. Holder Correctional Center Administrator.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you. Commissioner Hagan, Commissioner Rusted, welcome. I'm Brett Burkholder. I'm the administrator of the correctional facility. I've been the administrator for the past 15 years. I came there the second year so for historical. I would very much like to invite you out for a tour so you can understand when I bring anything to you in relation to the bill or something. You have a great understanding. If you're open to that, I would gladly reach out and we can set up a date and time. The reason I'm here though is Grand Forks Correctional Center is a facility that requires 24/7 mandatory staffing. We have multiple posts that must be manned. If we are short officers, we are required to find replacements when staffing falls below operational minimums. Depending upon the time of the day of the week, minimum staffing will vary anywhere from 8 to 11 officers. Have as few as 8 there, and at 3 o'clock in the morning. On Saturday afternoon, we're going to need at least 11. That's just an example. These are minimum staffing needs and not considered operational needs, and does not take into account any coverage for any county allowed leave, emergencies, pandemics, anything else that's happening, emergency trips to the hospital for inmates and such. So when we're at minimum with any of that stuff happening, we're scrambling. COVID made recruitment and retention of officers even more difficult than it was prior to the pandemic, and we've been typically operating with about 20% shortage of staff. This means we're about 15 officers short at any given time. This is not unique to Grand Forks County. It is a phenomenon that's nationwide. Most every facility you would contact is struggling to maintain staff, and we've had a number of facilities in the area have much higher numbers than we're experiencing, so we're fortunate about that. But for this reason of staff shortage, inability to staff the facility as it should, in August of this year, I came to the commission. The commission approved 2 specific policies. One dealt with weekend call and pay, mandatory call, where we put officers on call on their weekend off. We do that from Friday in the morning to Sunday, would actually be Monday at 7 o'clock in the morning when the Monday shift comes in. We also have a policy that would reward a stipend to those officers that come in on a short notice. If we get 2 inmates in a fight and we got to bring them up to the hospital and we need officers, we don't have officers in the building that can do that. We have a policy developed that would allow for a stipend, an incentive for them to come in. And that stipend was $25 if it was a partial shift, or if they came in and did the full shift, they'd get $50. On-call pay was determined to be $90 per on-call shift. That was based on the value of minimum wage. Both policies, when approved, had a sunset date of 12/31. In other words, in just a few weeks, allowing the evaluation and effectiveness of the policies and whether or not their continual need is needed. Well, many officers, I will say, do not like the mandatory shifts, and they get called in on short notice. These policies have been greatly received by them because they can plan for that weekend. As an officer, they get 2 of every 4 weekends off. So if they're on call for a weekend, now they have 3. They're working 2, on call 1, they know they have 1 weekend off. At least with this on-call system, they know when they're going to be on call. It's provided a much better response for the correction center when we have these needs, and it's been greatly appreciated by the supervisors of the facility at those times. And a good example of why this is needed is last month when we needed 6 officers, as we had 2 inmates that needed double escorts up to the hospital, so that's 4 officers, and we had another inmate with a medical appointment that required another 2 officers. So while we could plan for the medical appointment, we can't plan for the other, and when it happens, we have to respond. We have found that while these policies are not a complete solution to the ever-existing staffing shortages we've been encountering, they are and have been beneficial to operations. That brings me to you today. I ask that the board pass a motion allowing that these policies be continued, not with a sunset date, but rather until the need no longer exists as determined by myself. If we have sufficient staffing, I don't need it. If I can have my teams manned the way they're supposed to, I don't need to call in, I don't need stipend pay and everything because I got my staff there. It's only in the situations when we're running at minimum staffing 8 officers, for example, on a shift that needs 11, I have to have people there. There isn't an option. So I'm just asking for that motion that we use the staffing level to determine, well, actually, even if the policy stayed there forever, once I'm fully staffed, it wouldn't be needed, wouldn't be used. Because I wouldn't be calling people in and they wouldn't be just on call.
Mr. Burkholder, if this is continued, do you have that money in your budget?
Commissioner Ross, members of the commission, I'm short 15 staff right now.
So you have the money.
I
in your
have the
budget.
money. My preference is to be fully staffed.
Right.
Honestly, I don't want to pay overtime and stuff to these officers. That's the most expensive hours to buy. We're working with HR as best we can to get the numbers up. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle to get all the staff to meet. But yes, I do have the money in the budget.
Okay. Hey, Commissioner Higgins?
What is wrong with having a sunset where in December of next year, you come back and ask for the policy to renew? Why leave it in limbo? Why not just look at it each year and see what you need?
Commissioner Engen, members of the commission, if I'm fully staffed in July, I don't need the policy in August or December. I don't know when we'll be staffed to the level that we need to, that we don't need this. And that's why I'm asking not to have it a sunset. I don't believe we have sunset on other county policies. And I'm not
This is
understanding.
kind of a unique policy, of course, isn't it?
We have call-in policies in other departments, and I'm not aware of any of those having a sunset.
Well, even whether the sunset or not, if you have enough people, you just wouldn't be calling people in, right?
Exactly.
What were you doing on hiring people? I know in August, you said that you had some, but they might not have been high quality candidates. I can't remember what you had. I remember watching the meeting, but you had described it.
Commissioner Hagan, members of the commission, we're constantly hired. Right now, we're just finishing up the last day of 5 new employees. How many of those officers will stick around? I have no idea. We've had many officers last less than 30 days. They can't take it. It's a difficult position, and it's a lot more than some people expect. So, any idea, Roberta or Michelle, how many we have hired this year already?
I don't have that number.
I don't either, but I would guess it's well over 20 some. It's short.
Any other questions? What are the wishes of the board?
I wouldn't mind having, a sunset. I know that you're feeling that you shouldn't have a sunset on it, but I would, just to check in, if you need it, then, but if you don't, then you don't. What's wrong with having a check-in? I agree with you, Megan. I don't see anything wrong with just checking in. But any other support that we could have for you if that's here.
Commissioner Reagan?
Well, I really think policy is a good one. We have to try to do what we can to make their lives easier. These guys do have it, and their women have a difficult job. But I guess I would move to continue the policy to be reviewed again on December 31st of next year. It's very likely to be renewed unless there was some reason otherwise. And in the meantime, you can use it or you don't need to use it if by some miracle you end up fully staffed for a while. So that's my motion.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Commissioner Hagan, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Very good. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Now, detention administrator, Robin.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the commission. Hopefully, I just take a couple minutes of your time. I am just here to get Mr. Ross' signature on a couple documents with the commission's approval. The first one would be the renewal grant for attendant care. This would be effective January 1st, 2023, and with no termination date unless it's terminated. So that one won't have to be renewed again. The second one is the grant agreement for shelter care, and this runs from, it started October 18th of this year, and it'll go through June 30th of 2023. So if anybody has any questions about the grant, hopefully I can help answer them. Otherwise, just looking
Did
for.
everybody get a chance to read? Okay. Any, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I worked with Ms. Spain and Reggie Hansen as well in reviewing these contracts. We did have an amendment to one of them pertaining to the insurance provision. I did notice that one of them still had that paid investor aid in the insurance provision. So I think maybe if the board wished to approve these contracts, perhaps we could approve an amended version for the chair's signature once that's available, just so we can make that tweak on one of them and then.
That's for attendant care then?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I think the amendment was made on the attendant care, but not the other one.
Oh. Okay.
Unless not the latest version was scanned in.
Okay, we can check, cross-check that.
Thank
Yep.
Any other questions from the commission? Anybody like to make a motion? Okay.
Strong feeling on it either way, so.
Motion to approve. That would be with the amendments then? That need to be done.
Everything
amended.
is laid out here.
Okay. For chair signature. All right.
Did you get a second?
You still need a second, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Regan seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Engineer.
Chairman Falk, members of the board, welcome, Commissioner Hagan and Ruster. Look forward to working with you. And my name is Nick West. I'm the county engineer. I'd be the department head for the county highway department. And I would extend the same offer that Mr. Burkhardt did. If you would like to come out and show you around and show you a few things, I'd be happy to do that anytime.
And I would just like to add that Commissioner Knopf went to motor grader training.
I saw that. She sounded pretty excited. She was
Oh,
trying.
she was. Oh, yeah.
Big shoes to fill.
So, I mean, the invitation's out.
Yeah. We would normally have at least one operator taking that every year, so when the time arises, can let you know. To correct, I don't think she physically drove the machine.
No,
though.
she did not.
Okay,
She went to
okay.
the class.
Yeah, she took the class and went around in the field training. Yeah, so I do have a couple items for consideration and a couple updates, and I have a unique addition I'd like to add. I can explain that, but the first one is the NEDOT maintenance agreement. This is an annual agreement we have with the DOT every year. That we are maintaining our federal aid roads and federal aid projects to their standards. We do this every December, and examples up there for you. They are asking for chairman's signature, my recommendation. I don't think this copy that got scanned it had my recommendation on it. Auditor's chair and state's attorney's signatures. So with that, I would ask approval of that. Stand for questions.
Any questions from anybody? Do I have?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Rusted makes the motion to approve North Dakota maintenance agreement. Second. Okay, Commissioner Hagan. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.
Thank you. My next request is for a transmission repair invoice. This is unique. I usually don't stand up here and get approval for individual invoices. But this particular situation is a little different. As you all know, we have a lot of equipment in our fleet, 12 motor graders, a bunch of trucks we plow snow with, and all kinds of tractors and miscellaneous loaders and excavators and whatnot. However, we do have one pickup that we use out at the Grand Sky. We plow snow with it. And the reason we use that piece of equipment is it's the only thing small enough to get through the security gates. Otherwise, we don't really use a big truck plow or motor grader. So we have a guy that's his job, and that's his route. And that's what he does on snowplow days. And normally we would take care of this invoice. However, in the 9 years I've been at the county, we have, in our 20+ pickups we've never had to replace transmission because they're usually not used that heavy duty for plowing snow forward, backward, pushing hard. And I'm aware that the county does collect rent, I don't know, so to speak, lack of better words, from Grand Sky for purposes of maintaining and doing things like that out there. And so I would just ask that the repair bill to put a new transmission in it come out of that account rather than the regular highway department account.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. West, and members of the commission, Mr. West is correct. So the county receives $12,000 a year from Grand Sky for maintenance of the joint use runway agreement. And then the county does receive some participation rent as well. So when Mr. West ran this past me, I have no objection. I think it makes sense.
What is the cost of that, Mr. West?
$6,141.44 from Smitty's Transmission.
Commissioner Hagan?
And either of you talked to Debbie Nelson about how that would be done and why it wouldn't come out of the general fund?
So have I spoken with her directly, sir? No, I have not. She was involved in the email correspondence, so I haven't received any objections. The county, I believe Ms. Nelson has created a separate account just for the Grand Sky revenue. And I don't believe the county really used it to the best of my knowledge.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
So when did we start plowing out there? 3-4 years ago? Ish?
More than that. Yeah, probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When we stopped hauling the snow out of here.
That's right.
Anyway, this account bought the plow for the front of the pickup. We had the pickup already on hand and owned it, and then that account purchased that snowplow for it. So a little precedent. That'd be my request.
Okay. So the money comes out of where then? Just the general, county
It
general?
would come out of the Grand Sky revenue.
Grand Sky revenue, okay. Do I have a motion?
I move approval of the request to pick up repairs out of the Grand Sky rental account.
Okay. Second?
Makes sense to me. I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Rusty, seconds. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried.
Thank you. I do have one more formal request, and I apologize that there was a miscommunication between Ms. Nelson and I. Didn't get in the packet. And normally I wouldn't make this request. It's not in the packet. You wouldn't even have the opportunity to review it. However, it's for contract with the DOT for the grant we got this summer that has 4 structures on it. So this board has approved the project, the grant. We've approved the hiring of recommendation of the consultant to do the engineering work on it. And oddly enough, doesn't cost us any money. Because of this unique grant, it's a new program out there. Usually federal aid projects are 80% federal, 20% local. However, this one's 100% federally funded. So like, well, there's not a lot of risk to us, and it's their standard agreement. I don't think Ms. Wamsit had a chance to review it. Probably not, although I think it does ask for your signature. My request would be is upon contingent approval of Ms. Wamsit's review of the contract, that signatures from Chairman Ross and Auditor Ms. Nelson and Wamsit be covered for that. Or the other option is just wait 2 weeks till the next meeting.
Considering into my question, if time is of the essence, it really is a good idea for us to see the documents and especially for Ms. Wamsit to do that. So if you can wait till the next meeting in December, then I think that's the way we should go. What's your thought?
Timing is moderate. It can wait. I'll be honest, I like to save my favors for when we really need them. So if that is a concern, it's okay. Because there are times where I'm like, please sign this. Like, timing is really critical.
We have seen that.
Yes, you have. So if the board would like to wait, we certainly can.
Okay. All right. Okay. With the rest of the resolution, okay with that? Okay.
That's not a problem.
Sounds good.
Just a couple other little tidbits. So yesterday, Chairman Ross and I, we did close on that WIT property we've been working on, that grant, that FEMA grant for the property we're buying with the bridge. Yeah.
Now, are you guys familiar with this at all?
Possibly, it might have been something that I watched, but I can't.
Okay. They probably don't know, so
Quick recap.
can you, get a quick,
Absolutely,
synopsis?
absolutely. There's a single family resident in Turtle River Township, which will be in the northeast corner of the county between Manville and Oslo, that has a ring dike around it. It is in the floodplain and it is served by a major bridge over the Turtle River. The bridge is only utilized by this home. The bridge is in very poor shape. A new bridge would cost north of $1 million.
My brother-in-law used to live there.
Okay, oh, okay, okay. So we got a grant through North Dakota Department of Emergency Services in conjunction with FEMA, that called FEMA grant services. That pays 90% of the price of the property. So the county bought the property in whole. We will get reimbursed 90%. We're going to demolish the house and we're going to demolish the bridge and walk away. That's, yeah, it was a great move in my opinion.
What would the cost difference have been? $500,000?
Well, the property was appraised at 410,000. That's what they got, the owners got, and then the bridge, that new bridge we put out south of Northwood was, the bridge itself was 800,000. That was this year. Now I'm sure that's $1 million, you know, based on inflation. And that would be a similar bridge.
Yeah.
The Goose River is same magnitude as the Turtle River.
Sure.
And you know, it's just for one house. Nobody else uses it. There's no reason anybody else ever uses it. Doesn't go to any fields. It dead ends at the house, is what it is. But
Did
it's
you get
our bridge.
pictures?
Oh yeah, I got a bunch of pictures for you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they remodeled that house.
It is really,
And then they didn't really realize it was in a flood like that.
Yeah, totally remodeled.
it is really sad. It's a
So
beautiful
if you want to
house.
get sick, you could go out there and look at it sometime
Yeah.
before it gets
Before it
demolished,
gets knocked down.
intact.
I think we have 90 days to do it. Working with the sheriff's department, they're gonna do some training out there, force entry training, and working with the Manville Fire Department if they want to do a controlled burn, like practice project, trying to save some money wherever we can and
That's sad.
offer some community support there. But so when we're done, we demolish the property, we take the levees down, we restore it back to natural grass habitat. I'm gonna work with our conservation district if they want to plant some
And the bridge
flowers or
goes,
anything.
and the bridge goes.
Yeah, well, I want to wait a year or two until we make sure that that land is established good. We don't need to spray for weeds or do any maintenance on it. Then the bridge will go. But we'll barricade it off, with
Yeah.
some pretty permanent barricades right away. As soon as major construction is done, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Administration.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, first thing I have for the commission's review and consideration are the Dutchess County 2023 legislative priorities. I won't go through the entire document, but happy to answer any questions if there's a specific question to one of the priorities. The legislative committee did meet last week, did review the legislative priorities and approve them. So the next step is bringing to the county commission. Do this every biennium prior to the session beginning. Myself and Ms. Leon, we work with Team Grand Forks from the chamber, all true Grand Forks Public Schools, North Dakota Association of Counties. And what we do is we put out a call to the department heads as well for any legislative concerns or priorities that we as a county want to weigh in on. So that's the genesis of the document. The priorities address infrastructure such as another enhanced use lease development grant and prairie dog funding. So the EUL development grant is the state appropriated funds that the county receives that we use to put infrastructure into Grand Sky. Also, the document supports public and behavioral health initiatives that will be going before the legislature. It supports Department of Health and Human Services request for funding to support domestic violence and sexual abuse. As you recall, the CVIC really is the tip of the spear on that issue, and Ms. Tompkins and her staff have been incredibly working very diligently in leading that effort. There's been some discussion of another base retention grant, which that was discontinued in 2019. Minot, Grand Forks, and Fargo have been working together on that one. And then public safety. So what we'll use, assuming that the commission approves this list of priorities, this is used by staff or commissioners when offering testimony during the legislative session, when attending legislative forums such as the school district forum, the chamber's legislative forums, and would definitely come in handy during Grand Forks Days at the Capitol, which is March 2nd and 3rd, which all are invited and encouraged to attend. So barring any specific questions on the priorities, I would ask for a motion for approval. And then what will happen next is if the commission does approve the priorities, I'll then share them with our Grand Forks County legislators. And I'll share them with all of our partners and the department heads.
Any questions from any of the commissioners on the? Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the legislative priorities here. With the caveat that perhaps the new commissioners haven't had time to look at it yet. So
No, I did. It just,
Okay.
all right. Okay.
Do I have a second? Okay, got a second. Any further discussion on it at all? Okay. Mark, anything? Nope. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Same sign. Carried.
One quick note, on December 1st, the public schools did hold their legislative dinner. Myself, Ms. Blomstead, and Ms. Leon attended. It was very well attended. The city was there. Grand Forks Airport Authority was there, Park District, School District, obviously, the city. Probably one of the better attended when it comes to appropriators and our legislators. So we were able to visit some of our legislators and answer some questions.
So what, any comments from them at all about any of these priorities?
Yes, positive comments, mainly. Some interest in the CVIC and the domestic violence and sexual assault funding request by DHHS. I think it's obviously that's not a county issue or a city issue. It's a community issue. It's a statewide issue, and I think some were receptive to that. Some were complimentary of the county for the Grand Sky project and how we have used the state funding in the past, and no real concerns on how that's been handled. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir. The next item, like I said, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to table the parking ramp.
Yeah.
Okay. Association of Defense Communities, that was that was in November in Phoenix. County is a member of the Association of Defense Communities. They have 2 big conferences a year. The one that Ms. Leon and I attended was the Installation Innovation Forum, which is really geared on EULs, public-private partnerships or P4s, to try and really to offset costs between communities and installations. While at ADC, myself and Ms. Leon and our UL attorney and Mr. Sawyer met with the acting assistant secretary of the Air Force for installations, Mr. Edwin Oshiba, and the deputy assistant secretary of the Air Force, Mr. Robert Moriarty. That was really just an update on Grand Sky, as Mr. Oshiba is new in the chair. So not a lot of familiarity with Grand Forks Air Force Base and Grand Sky. So general overview, where it started, where it's at, where it's going. Very complimentary of the project. Mr. Moriarty, who used to be the director for Airport Civil Engineering Center, still refers to Grand Sky as the Air Force's poster child for an UL. So still very complimentary. We also met with the director, Patrick O'Brien. He's the director of the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. We know it affectionately as OEA, or Office of Economic Adjustment. For the commission's benefit, Grand Sky is here today because the community received seed money from OEA after the BRAC, which led to Grand Sky. So Mr. O'Brien always loves to hear Grand Sky updates. And we discussed DSIP, the Defense Community Infrastructure Program grant. He highly encouraged the county to apply for a DSIP grant for the fire station need out of Grand Sky. So we're having some conversations with Mr. Sawyer, and we are definitely looking to go down that route. The nice thing about the DSIP grant is we are considered a rural community, so there's no local match that's required. And then we'll work this, there's some upfront work to do, but then eventually we'd look to enter into a P4 agreement with the base as well once this is done. Happy to discuss this more offline. There's a lot to it.
One more comment. Commissioner Hagan or Commissioner Rusted, have either one of you been out to Grand Sky at all? Would you like to go on a tour out there?
Got on my list here.
Pardon?
Got on my list of tours I can be doing soon.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Well,
to
then
set
John is
that up?
going on tours for a while.
I know a guy.
Yeah, he knows the guy.
I know that.
Yeah,
We'll make that happen.
but I mean, you guys will be really impressed with that place out there. I think right now there's what, 21 or 22 Global Hawks sitting out there at Northrop Grumman?
There's 22 Global Hawks. There's it's about $4 billion in aircraft right now. And that doesn't count for
Or downside.
investment.
Yeah,
It's quite a project.
so we'll get that set up for you guys.
Kind of wrapping up, ADC once again stressed quality of life issues, P4s, EULs, really with BRAC and strategic pacing. There's no BRAC on the horizon. It hasn't been mentioned very often. It's more so death by 1,000 cuts. It's the Air Force equivalent to BRAC now. But quality of life, especially behavioral health and education, are still a big concern for the Air Force. And so they're still looking at that in communities. In fact, at one of the sessions that Ms. Leon and I sat in, there was some very excellent examples of behavioral health programs being executed in different installation communities. So Ms. Leon was able to put that together and share it with leadership. So that makes the trip worth it right there. I think the courthouse safety improvement grant.
Scott Johnson's on that.
No, actually, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna give that one to Ms. Leon. She's been working that grant.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so pretty straightforward. We've done these in the past. The courthouse improvement grant, the state level. We've been working with Allison and Scott to review what they need. So this grant in particular would be focused on remodeling the front entrance, security stations, addressing gaps in the layout, and adding protective materials. Right now, people can kind of walk right on through if they don't decide to stop. So it creates a secure entrance where people can leave at will, but they cannot enter at will. It would have a cutout window to transfer objects to and from. And then they would also add a voice enunciation system throughout the entire courthouse. And so this is a project that I've been looking at for a while. This is a 75% state, 25% county match. So it would be $173,786.25 from the state. And then on our end, $57,928.75. We met with Susan, and I'm going to budget her, or give her last name wrong. Har, from the Historical Preservation Commission, and Chuck Flemmer, and they approved of it. It's not changing anything really in terms of the building. It's just adding some pieces to add to safety. And so we'd be looking just for the chair signature, so we can get that sent off. It's due December 31st at the state level.
Mr. Chair, the commission's already approved this package, so I don't think you need a motion for chair signature, but you certainly can if you want to check that box. But we do have it in your packet to sign.
Okay. Would the other commissioners will like to chime in on it, the new ones? Questions? Commissioner Russ,
See if something similar is available to the roof.
I
If you
know
want
that
to
they,
explain why it's being done. Is it? Or is it-
Well, why is it being, it's been requested of court administration in the past. It got delayed for lack of funding, and then of course COVID hit, then supply chain issues hit. The price grew exponentially, unfortunately. Essentially, the current setup is if you walk through the courthouse, you have the magnetometer, you have the desk where the deputy sits. It's not the most secure entrance, and it does put that security, that deputy at risk, especially if someone just wants to walk in having a really bad day. But it also not only would make that deputy more secure, but obviously state's attorney's office, judges, court administration, jurors, it just really makes it more secure.
I would say that regarding the courthouse dome, we have talked about it. We even looked at a potential grant to pursue for the study, and it just the timelines didn't line up. We wouldn't have been able to get it done. We did get some information that they're hoping at the state level to get some funding at a larger level to hand out more grants that we may be able to pursue, not anywhere near what we would need to handle the dome, but any way that we can find money to shave off the costs we're looking for.
All right, so let's do another motion on this. Do I have a motion then to approve the courthouse safety improvement grant? Okay, Commissioner Hagan, have a second? Commissioner Rustin, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried.
Mr. Chair, the last thing I have for the commission is Commissioner Knopf has requested to purchase a laptop. But the commission has to be the one to divest county property. She spoke with our IT director and with Evelyn, and Evelyn did quote a price of $250. Commissioner Knopf is fine with that. Then IT can take care of what they need to take care of. It does take an act of the commission to
Okay,
divest that.
everybody okay with that? I mean,
I
do
mean,
you have
what
a
else do you do
motion?
with them when somebody's
Actually, Commissioner Hagan, in the past, we donate them to the school's Career and Technical Education Center, and the students, excuse me, they work on them, students that want to go into IT.
Motion? Hagan. Second by Commissioner Ian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. State's attorney.
Can I have a comment? I'm not sure if you folks know, but Tom Ford is on the Association of Defense Communities Board of Directors. How many bases are there in this country? 200.
Easily, if
Yeah.
more.
And how big is the board?
The board is 14. It's a national board made up of 14 individuals.
So he's in a pretty impressive position to support Grand Forks Air Force Base. And just thought you should know that he's pretty involved in that.
Thank you.
Most days.
Most days.
Okay, Ms. Wamstead.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I have no business for the board today. However, I would welcome our new commissioners and I'm certainly available for any legal questions that you guys.
Okay, committee reports. Ring.
Well, the first thing that happened after our last meeting is I didn't even know that Congressman Kramer did town halls in the small towns. I live in Northwood, you see, and one of his staff members came out and it was available for people to state their desires or complaints or whatever else. So I went and talked to the staff member there, and that's a good thing to be doing. Then there was an NDSU extension planning session that I attended, and a couple of Zoom meetings concerning the race and a few other issues. So other than that, with Thanksgiving in there wasn't much going on.
Okay. I guess because of the holidays, I haven't had any committees at all, so. And I'm working on those, and you guys will be able to see or have some input into it, you know, for your portfolios. So we'll be going over that in this month sometime, and then we'll put them out in January, so. Okay. All right, unfinished new business.
Mr. Chair, I got so distracted, Ms. Nelson's computer locked up on me.
Okay. Conditional use permit.
See if I can, I know I wrote that down somewhere. Apologies. I'm not used to being the auditor and the director of administration.
You're doing great.
Oh, that was the pet crematorium.
Yeah, the pet crematorium.
And that's just an informational.
It's just informational, sir. Yes.
Informational, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Correspondence, November 8th, 2022, general election abstract of votes. I think you saw that, it was on that computer, yeah. You also on
All
that?
3 pages of that.
Yeah.
So your vote totals.
Mr. Chair, there was a correspondence. The city is looking to extend wastewater infrastructure north of town. I believe that it's in regards to, it should have been in your packets under correspondence. It wasn't in there?
No.
It is in the packet.
What page?
Page 233. It's an opportunity for public comment on expanding it. Mhm.
That's right. All right. That's there.
4H, thank you. That's in the computer somewhere. All right. We have nothing else. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
That usually your job?
That was.
I'll move to adjourn today.
Okay. Favor for second? All right, Mark. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Yeah.
All right.
They have to send them away. Oh, yeah. So our time we sent them to Winnipeg. Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, good falls on my desk.
So.
They're not.
Whatever.
got a friend last summer for her birthday, and she lives in Victoria. She was like talking to me about how for 5 weeks out there.
Yeah.
You must want to. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Wear many hats.
Orders are official.
It really is. They might as well just absorb us.
Oh, everything's going around right now. Brian's gonna stop. Sure, fine, exchange jokes.
Joe Banish.
You applied last time.
Well, you're applying now.
My cell phone's been on
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll be right.
Yeah, well, since I started early.
Oh, you just were all day. Like your position.
I'm getting used to this weather.
Where are you from?
Michigan.
Michigan, oh, it's not too different, but
Yeah.
it's a little different.
It doesn't maybe get like low zero and then. you get
No,
more
this is
snow.
nothing now.
She's the only one who knows. It scares me. Minus 30, minus 40.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, just-
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Get a nice Columbia jacket. You'll be good.
Are you from North Dakota?
I'm
I got a lot of stuff for you to sign.
From here, but.
That's an honor of being the chairman.
I'm just making sure I don't.
Yeah, I tease, I escaped.
Not the shelter.
And was gone to the Southwest for 13 years and came back.
Oh, where'd you go?
New Mexico for 10 and Arizona.
Good job.
Hey, congratulations again.
It's a little nice. Yeah. I'm hoping to go to Florida to see my parents.
To go have dinner with my husband. Saturday.
For fun.
Well, happy birthday.
We celebrate. My first
Yeah. There you go. Kill 2 birds with
I
one stone.
know. First thing, I know. I remember letting us see
Actual.
Happy birthday. This is sort in and.
Mine was on Saturday.
Yes, my birthday buddy. Yes. Sounds good. So I'm gonna go off to dinner with my hubby, so.
All right.
Yeah, morning even better, because I have that afternoon.
Okay, and there on this, your chairman.
Sure.
They had one.
Debbie's gonna have to second that.
Here.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Right there, and I'll be working from tonight.